Today we're going to be discussing how to master free will. And this shir is adapted from the great foundation series of the Rosh Yeshiva of Eshet Torah Zatzal, Rav Noach Weinberg, may his memory be for our blessing. He taught us that there are 5 levels of mastering free will. And here in this class, we go into the depth of those 5 in order to master free will ourselves. And what it means to master free will, ultimately, is to become a masterful human being. Because what makes you unique over the animal kingdom is free will. Your ability to make cognitive choices is what makes you unique in this world. Meaning if you put a primate in an MRI or you put a human in an MRI, they're not going to come out that differently. The difference is the human being who has this spiritual side to him gives him a different level of free will. See, a primate still may decide between banana and nuts, when it's making a choice. Whereas a human being has all these moral choices he's making. A human being has just a whole more complex level of choice that he or she makes. And therefore, by becoming a master of free will, you are becoming a master of being a human being. Or shall we say a masterful human being. Got that? So, becoming a master of free will is becoming a masterful human being. You want to be a masterful human being, a masterful chooser? Because what makes you unique over the animal kingdom is free will. So, to be a masterful human being means you got to master free choice. So there are actually 5 levels of free will. And we're going to start with the first level. So there's 5 levels of mastering free will. Okay? So level number 1 is is the word constant. And constant means that to be a master of free will, you have to constantly choose. Get present to the choices that you have now available to you. Now, most people only think of like big choices. Like, for example, the people in this room are people who chose to come to Israel. But you may have noticed that your choice ended after you got on the airplane. And then you came to Israel, and now you're in Jerusalem. Now you got to Jerusalem. But did you choose to be in Jerusalem? Or did you just wake up here this morning? Those who are watching this on their computer screen, you chose to watch this. So you maybe have even greater free will than the people in this classroom who chose... actually, you guys chose to come to this class. Or maybe it's just on the schedule. Do you come to this class because you came to this class, or are you just doing the essential schedule? What's your name?
Yitzhak.
Yitzhak, right. Did you come here, Yitzhak, just because this is the essentials program, or you came specifically to this class?
Came specifically to Jerusalem.
To Jerusalem. Eli, you came to this class, or you're in the schedule?
Both.
So everyone now choose to be in this room right now. Choose to be with me this hour. Choose to be in Jerusalem. Forget the fact that you woke up here. As if someone is saying to you, would you like to go to Jerusalem? And you say, yes. And now, boom, here you are. Choose to be here now. Choose the seat you're sitting in. Choose the posture you're sitting in. Did you choose this posture? Or is this just something you fell into? Choose your posture. You can choose to focus on your breath. See how long you can stay focused on choice while still paying attention to this class. Choose to be with me. Choose to be with the other people around you in the classroom. These aren't just random people. These are the people who are sharing your space today. So the first point in becoming a master of free will is start to choose. Not just making choices that will change something, but choose what is. Choose your parents. How many of us don't choose our parents? But what do you mean, choose my parents? How do I make a choice of my parents? The answer is that you can still nevertheless choose them. You notice that you don't choose them all the time. Like, if your father calls and you get off the phone quickly, that's not choosing your father. Choose to be a Jew. Now, the way constant works is constant makes you alive. Constant brings to life what otherwise would have been mundane. And that's what we're saying. To be a masterful human being means to be involved in choice. Even when no real decision will be made, you can nevertheless choose what is. You can choose your spouse, who you've already married. Choose your kids. Someone could even have someone who is deceased, but they refuse to choose that, meaning they're resisting the fact that they're deceased, as if that somehow is going to make it better or bring them back. And therefore they're living in the resistance of what is, and that's not a good place to live. So one can even choose to let so-and-so be deceased. Okay, you guys got number one? What's number one? Constant. Number one level of mastering free will is constant. To constantly be involved in choice. Choosing what is. Now, how this relates to God, I mean, this is class in Torah, Judaism. How this relates to God is, well, guess who's creating the world right now, constantly? God is. God creates the world at all times, constantly. And right now, the world is coming into existence. This moment. Judaism doesn't believe in cause and effect, as far as like the real picture, meaning God created a world of cause and effect, right? I drop this kippah, it drops and lands on the table down below. That's cause and effect. If I drop this pen, there's cause and effect. But in truth, in the real reality, the world's actually coming into being from absolute nothingness. God is creating the world from scratch at all times. Like a strobe light. Anyone seen a strobe light? Where it's flashing on and off? So God is actually strobing the world from off to on. At all times from absolute nothingness. You can't see it. It's going on at extreme speed. But the world's coming into being from absolute nothingness at all times. So in truth, when I drop this pen, and you would think that the causality of gravity is making it drop to this other hand, it's actually being recreated. Every millisecond, I don't know what the right small denomination of a number would be, but every little millisecond is being recreated as it moves its way down into my hand, which is also being recreated. Everything's being recreated. Everything is brand new. The clothes you're wearing are brand new. They're being created brand new. In fact, the lint that came off of your clothes in the dryer, that lint ball is brand new. It's being created from absolute nothingness into somethingness at all times. This is a very different way of looking at life. It's a much more alive way of looking at life. So part of being a monotheist means getting in touch with the fact that God's creating the world now. So in a graphic, we would make it would look like this. So here's God creating the world. Past, present, future. Okay. Now God is above space and time. So God's aware of past, present, and future. But the question is God creating right now, past, present, and future? Right now? No, it'd be crazy for God to create yesterday. And even though God knows what will be in the future, He's not creating that now. That would be insane. Why would God bother creating something that doesn't exist yet? It only exists in potential, in idea. So, past, present, and future are, though God's aware of them, He's only creating now. God is not creating a year ago, nor is God creating a year from now. Not an hour ago and not an hour from now. Not a minute ago and not a minute from now. Not a second ago and not a second from now. Where is God interfacing with creation? Where does God interface with the creation?
Present.
In the present, right now. So this present moment is the golden moment. Right now, and right now, and right now, and right now, and right now. This is the time to connect to God. This is the God experience. So take a deep breath. Take a moment. And get in touch with that. Get in touch with this being the God experience. Stop waiting for it, thinking it's going to happen this Shabbos. Take a moment and relax. God's creating the world now. So for God, this is the God experience. The question is, where are you? Are you spaced out? Or are you mastering free will, getting involved in the constant choosing? And therefore God's full on, on a scale of 1 to 10, God's giving a 10 right now in creating the world this moment. The question is, where are we? Are we waiting for some God experience to happen? Or is this the God experience? So take a moment and experience the God experience. Okay, so you can open your eyes. Anyone disappointed by the God experience? John, it wasn't disappointing, was it? Some people are disappointed by the God experience. You know why? Because they're used to life hitting them in the face. Bam! They're used to, you know what I call them? I call them peak experience junkies. You got that? Peak experience junkies? A lot of people are peak experience junkies. They're waiting for what we call the it. If they're into guitar, so it's that guitar lead, that the lead guitar player is playing in that concert. If he's a skier, it's that perfect ski day. If he's the surfer, it's that perfect wave. If he's the businessman, it's that great deal. And everyone's waiting for the it so they'll feel truly alive. But we also do the same thing with the God experience, is we wait for some lightning bolt that's going to somehow be the God experience for us. Now, I know a lot of people wouldn't admit what they truly wanted was a God experience. But deep down, all of us want it. Well, guess what? This is the God experience. Right here, right now. This is the God experience. Learn to get off of this peak experience addiction. Weekend warriors or people who work all year for that 2-week vacation. Get off of your addiction for the peak experiences and start to get in tune with the subtleties of the moment. Because God exists not just in those peak experiences. You're not going to lose your peak experience. You're still going to have an amazing Shabbos this week. It's going to be awesome. The Shabbos tables are going to be flying. But until Shabbos, it's also very special. This is the interface between God and creation, right here, right now. In this physical place, in this present time. This is where God interfaces with creation. This is where God interfaces with you. That's your birthright. Grab it. Be in the God experience. Got that, Eli? Got that, Yitzhak?
Got it.
Good. Okay, so what's number 1 in mastering free will? Everybody? Constant. Okay, number 2 in mastering free will is reevaluation. The second level of mastering free will is the ability to reevaluate. I mean, I think that's obvious to all, that if you're not reevaluating, if you cannot reevaluate, you've lost your free will. Meaning if you're stuck in your occupation, or you're stuck in any past, anything from your past that was once a decision, or maybe you were coaxed into it, or maybe you were pressured into it. I don't care how you got into it, but if there's some kind of mode that you're in from the past that you feel no longer free to break out of, you have lost a bit or a large part of what free will is all about. And that's sad, because free will is what makes you human, which means you're less human, you're less alive as a human being. One has to be able to reevaluate his life. A person doesn't necessarily have to change anything, just to reevaluate. I have to reevaluate my Judaism. I have to reevaluate my marriage. I have to reevaluate my sports. I have to reevaluate my relationship with my kids. It's what makes it alive. What happens when we don't reevaluate things is they die on us. You're not necessarily making a new decision. When I reevaluate Judaism, it's not that I'm going to go with some other religion all of a sudden, or drop religion altogether. But it's a looking at Judaism and saying, like, what is it? What's true to me? It's looking at my marriage and saying, what's amazing about this woman? And another way of saying reevaluation in that case is recommitting. Now, as far as reevaluating to actually change something, that's already a bigger thing, and you got to have a lot of courage to do it. And you'd best do it with advice. Generally, if you're going to reevaluate a past decision, you do it with advice. One should never reevaluate past decisions, especially the bigger ones, without getting, very good advice and a lot of sleeping on it. You want to sleep on it a lot. But to make decisions, I get people who want to get married. They think they found their spouse. That's a major decision. They need to speak to somebody about that. If someone wants to get divorced, I get that too. That's something that's going to require counseling. Then they're going to have to really think hard before they reevaluate or make a new decision about who they're married to. So reevaluation basically is getting out of the robotics of the past so that you can either reaffirm what you're into or make a new decision. And by doing reevaluation, by using this step in mastering free will, one can avoid what's called a midlife crisis, where someone gets to their 50s and realizes, what did I do with my life? And now they have to go do something crazy like buy a motorcycle or something. You can avoid the midlife crisis by simply reevaluating as you go. Is this really the occupation I want? Is this the city I want to live in? Is this the way I want my lifestyle to be? And you reevaluate it. And if you come up with findings that lead to a shift, and so with a lot of courage you shift. It takes courage. Usually takes a lot of support as well. If someone wants to reevaluate, you're probably going to need some people to support you in the process. I find Jews that reevaluate their Judaism and choose to become more observant. You got to get rid of that bag. We're recording here. Jews who are what are we talking about? Jews who are reevaluating their lifestyles, meaning maybe to become more observant. It's very scary. It's very scary for them. It takes tremendous courage. And the funny thing is their Gentile friends where they grew up will all say, "You're so courageous." But their Jewish friends will say, "You're so weak. What a wimp." You understand that? It's the strangest thing. Because it takes every ounce of courage you got, and it takes a lot of support. And you'll find that the success of their shift towards Judaism often depends on the support they receive. Meaning the more time they're in a supportive community of Jews who keep Judaism, who keep the mitzvahs, the more time they're with them, the longer they can last back in an environment where people are not interested at all in their choice of being more observant. So it really takes support to reevaluate. And the same thing if someone's making any other decision that is going to be a shift. They're going to need support in that process. Reevaluation has two major pitfalls. Pitfall number one, as we've pretty much explained, is momentum. Is there two M's in is there another M there? Or did I spell it right? Momentum of the past. That's obvious. We discussed that. And the other pitfall is looking good, which we've also touched on. Is it doesn't look good to reevaluate. Meaning if you reevaluate and make a new choice, it's going to rock the boat of your family, of your friends, of people who know you aren't going to deal with it too well. So that's the other biggie. Of course, the only reason they're not dealing with whatever your choice is well is because what you've done is you've created a vacuum for them. Part of who they are is who you are. Everyone's related in a community, whether it's a family community or a community, a neighborhood. Everyone's depending on everyone else to play some kind of game of these unwritten rules of who you are. And when you reevaluate and make a new decision, you're basically rocking the boat. Not about who you are, you're rocking the boat of who they are. Because they need you to be you, to stay who you were, for them to be them. And when you choose to be someone else, it creates a vacuum for them of who they are. No wonder they get so defensive. But when a Jew makes a decision to become more observant, let's say, it doesn't create a vacuum for their Gentile friends. If anything, it may fill a vacuum. Yes. It may say like, yeah, he's also living true to his religion. But for their Jewish friends, it creates a vacuum. It creates a crisis of identification. Lifestyle. So we have to have mercy, by the way, on these people who get defensive and aggressive with us. We have to be merciful. And they're not being merciful towards us, but we got to be merciful back. And by the way, it's a good passive-aggressive tactic. If you want to use it on them, when they attack, you just say something like, wow, I see this really has you quite upset. Do you want to talk about it? Or is there something about my choice of being, living with integrity as a Jew that you need to speak, that you want to talk about, that's rubbing you the wrong way? What's going on? What's going on for you with this? I'm just living my life here, trying to get as close to truth as possible, and it seems to have really affected you to the point of where you're even being hurtful. You want to talk about it? No, I don't want to talk about it. But that'll get them off your back real quick. I have like this whole list of the best hits of getting people off your back while you're becoming more observant. Because it's a good thing to do to get them off your back, because you don't need you don't need someone chiseling you away while you're trying to build yourself. So there's, I've got great lines for this kind of stuff. Of course, we get so flustered because it's one who's becoming observant gets he feels very vulnerable. And he's too vulnerable to think of the good lines. I think I should really print them. I think I should print these lines. Put them on a little card so you can, while you're feeling flushy. Do you want to talk about why this is affecting you so strongly to the point where you're actually lashing out at me? So, anyway. That's why looking good is another pitfall. Is we're afraid to reevaluate because it will rock the boat of our loved ones, rock the boat. Meaning we're threatening ourselves to lose our support. Human beings need a tremendous amount of support, and you don't want to rock your support group. And your support group's your family. Your support group's your friends. But the problem is you have no ability to have. There's no free will there. If you can't reevaluate because your support group's more important than truth, than the search for truth, you realize this issue of not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting to look bad, or should we say, trying to continue looking good for your family and friends, takes away your access to truth, to your search for truth. You got to decide what the goal is here. Is your goal support? Or is your goal truth? Is your goal to continue looking good, or is your goal to maximize your free will, your ability to choose, to be the ultimate human being, to be a masterful human being? So you see, what stands in the way of being a masterful human being is this fear of how it will affect others. But it's not, if you think about it, it's not even being merciful to the others, to your family, to your friends, to not reevaluate life, to not use your free will, to not be a truth seeker, just so you don't upset them. That's not helping them either. All it's doing is creating more funk, more cess in the cesspool, it's just creating more mediocrity. It's not helping them. I understand it may upset them for a while, but a year or two later, you become the example, you become a beacon of light of someone who has integrity, who searches for truth and doesn't look back. Doesn't look over his shoulder to see who's watching, who may be not supporting him. You become instantly the leader of your family, is what you become. Because you're not playing that game. And by the way, the whole time you do it with intense, flaming love for your loved ones. You express love constantly to reassure them at all times that this has nothing to do with your relationship. This has to do with my search for truth, my desire to be a masterful human being, my desire to ultimately have free will and make choice in my life. But boy, do I love you, and I will always be there for you. You have to reiterate that. You have to express it with words. You have to say, don't let my decisions get in the way of our relationship. Blood is thicker than values, my brother. If it's a sibling. Blood is thicker than values. My blood for you, my love for you as my brother, is thicker than these choices of values I'm making. I will always be there for you. Nothing will get in the way of us being brothers or siblings. You'll say, oh yeah, You coming to my son's bar mitzvah this Shabbos? That's 30 miles away. You say, darn right I am. In fact, I'll be the only one staying in the local hotel there. He says, there is no local hotel. It's in the woods. We'll all be the one camping. There's bears, tigers. Nothing will stand in the way of our relationship. I'll be there. I tell you, my mother, when she became Shomer Shabbos, she started keeping Shabbos, so it pretty heavily freaked out the family, and there were, all the bar mitzvah, everything, all these family events, and my mom's like, one of the matriarchs of the family. She's got to be there. So at first, everyone was rolling their eyes as she, would require kosher food. She'd bring her own food. She would have to book a hotel. She was totally on her own. She'd come to the event, but everyone would be kind of like, here comes Miss Religious. But a couple years later, that's what I'm saying. A couple years later, you know what happens now when there's a bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah?
Facilitating her.
What's that?
Everybody's facilitating her.
Yeah, they're booking the hotel for her and paying for it.
Yes.
She's happy to pay for it. They pay for it. They're ordering the glatt kosher food that the caterer goes and gets and brings double sealed and stamped, and they bring it to her table. They provide the food. They're paying, and it's probably double any other meal there because they're getting it, extra. And the family provides it for her. And if she were, God forbid, to eat non-kosher, to say, "Oh, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to make waves," they would be, today, now years later, they would be crushed. That like the one family member who actually is keeping Judaism the way it was created, for her to fall on that, don't do that for us. You're our beacon of light. You're the one who does things right. So I promise for anyone who's dealing with the tsuris, the pain, the suffering of a lifestyle shift towards the betterment of themselves, I promise you in the end you will be highly supported even by your detractors now. Later they will consider you someone with integrity, the sagely family member. We're only on number 2 and we're out of time. So maybe I can pull off 3, 4, and 5 in 5 minutes. Maybe pause it once in case we did step 3 yesterday. Step 3 is the battleground. Battleground, 1 word or 2 word?
One.
Step 3 is the battleground, and it is the battleground between the soul and the body. The soul is one's godly aspirations, and the body is one's physical aspirations. The body shares the desires of the entire animal kingdom, which is survival and reproduction. Survival and reproduction are basically what guide and govern all movements of animals. So too humans are highly guided by those notions of survival and reproduction. By humans, it's, we call it, I guess, money and sexuality. Money and sexuality are what guide human beings. Maybe not in that order. And the body voice, which is basically, when I say money, I don't just mean money. I mean your security, financial security, food. It's also the ego, like being noticed and recognized. That's all part of the animal soul. And then you have this godly soul. Your godly soul is much more feminine. By the way, the animal soul is much more masculine. It's more assertive. It wants to assert itself. It wants to be someone. The godly soul, that is what we call the neshama. The godly soul is more feminine. It's more giving. It's not looking for the honor. It's not looking to be recognized. It sees itself and others as one. So the guy at the door is you. He's just the guy who knocks on your door for tzedakah is you. He's just a mirror for you to deal with you in his form. And will you see? Are you going to see him as part of you? The godly soul is. It basically says do the right thing. On the bottom level, it says do the right thing. Although it says something else too if you don't listen to it. Meaning if you don't do the right thing, it has a whole other voice. You know what the voices are? Conscience and guilt. I'm sorry. Conscience is to do the right thing. Guilt is when you don't. So you should know guilt is a very spiritual thing. There's not like a lion psychologist after they kill a wildebeest or something. There's no like lion psychologist that comes to counsel all the lions for killing the wildebeest. There's no conscience. My fish tank, when the bigger fish decide to go after one of the little ones, you know, they don't have to work it out after. You know, and deal with it. Conscience and guilt are spiritual. Now, the point of the soul is to connect to God. That's the point of the soul. Without it, you'd have no clue that there was something outside the matrix, outside this physical world. If you had only had your animal voice, you'd be just in the rat race, basically. Survival. Probably wouldn't give anyone anything. It's only the soul that gives you the notion of giving, caring, higher values. That's the soul. Barbara, we got 2 more people coming in. Maybe pause it for a second. You see, God is infinite, and this world's finite. Well, we're in this world. We're in this finite world. So the only way we could get out, meaning to relate out to the creator of this finite world, would be that we must have something in us that relates to infinite. Is that clear? Meaning we have to have some kind of fiber optic link that we relate to the infinite with, otherwise we are trapped. Talking about fish tanks. We're inside a fish tank with no connection to the outside world. But we have been given that connection, and that connection is called the soul, or call it the neshama. The soul is our connection to the outside world, i.e. to God, and we're meant to use it as that link, to link to God via that. How do we use it? Well, we use it through prayer, through Torah study, and through mitzvahs. Or Torah, mitzvahs, and prayer. There's the siren. Let's see how close my watch is to being on time. I'm going to add a minute. Is that an atomic clock? Oops. No, it's 11. So, you understand that through Torah study, mitzvahs, and prayer, we connect to God. And by the way, the rest of the world does the same thing. Through scholarship, in religious circles, through actions that they do, which would be like our mitzvahs, and through prayer. That's the way we connect to the Creator. So what is all this about conscience and guilt? So conscience and guilt is actually only for people who ignore their soul. Meaning people who are using their soul are involved in proactive stuff. They're proactively going to learn Torah like you all did today. They're proactively doing a mitzvah. They're proactively praying. That's the way my neighborhood uses the soul. We are proactive soul users. But conscience and guilt are for people who ignore their soul, so they get conscience and guilt, which is fine. Thank God they have that. If it wasn't for that, they'd be in really big trouble. kind of like ABS, anti-brake, skidding brakes. I don't use that feature. I drive carefully, I'm using my brakes as they were intended to be used. If, God forbid, there's an emergency, I do need it, the anti-brake. But, can you imagine only using that? I'd hate to be your passenger, but like you pull up, you're pulling up to the light, behind a couple cars. You get to like within 4 feet of their bumper without even touching your brakes, and then the last second you just slam on your brakes as hard as you can. Your passenger's like, ah! And of course you don't hit their bumper because your tires don't skid. You have ABS. And you look over at your passenger, you're like, what's the matter with you? You're like, what's the matter with me? You didn't stop. He said, I did stop. I have ABS, man. Chill out. So, meaning the world's basically using their ABS systems. Everyone's ignoring their souls, and they've been relegated to conscience and guilt. Conscience and guilt is just the last step of like keeping you from falling out through the bottom of the barrel altogether. Let me explain. Conscience is saying, usually for people who are ignoring their souls, is saying, don't do that. That's the voice. Don't do that. Everyone listen to the voice in your head for a second, by the way. You got to identify that voice. Take a moment and listen to that voice. Voice in my head? What voice in my head? What's he talking about, a voice in my head? That's the voice in your head. What I'm talking about is your thoughts, your thinking. So you're thinking, you actually get thoughts saying, don't do that. It's like the car bumpers in America that beep when you get near the bumper behind you. Beep, beep, beep. Let's say this is something you shouldn't do. So there is beeping. Beep, 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 beep. When you hear that beeping, you're supposed to say, that's my soul saying not to do something. At which point a smart person would back off. But we live in a society that says, if it feels good, do it. And it's constantly reiterated. It feels good, do it. Spoil yourself. Enjoy. Do it for yourself. It feels good. And everyone's brainwashing us into doing what feels good. And what happens is everyone keeps hitting the bumpers because they've stopped even listening to their ABS system. The last step was the ABS system. But even the ABS system no one listens to. The thing that keeps you from hitting stuff you shouldn't be hitting. And I have a whole class, an hour class called the West's War Against the Conscience. And it goes through all the history. It's an amazing class. It goes through all the history of the West's war against the conscience. That's why the Greeks hated the Jews, because the Jews were all about the soul and conscience, and all the way through Christianity. He died for your sins, so don't worry about it. Right? Don't worry about what you did this week. Just come in and confess, and He died for your sins anyway. You don't have to worry about it. Christianity is part of the West's war against the conscience, and all the way to, meaning even religion tried it, but then they were in big trouble with the Enlightenment, when kind of Europe got out from under the thumb of the church, which was seemingly a good thing, except now the conscience. And what do we do with the conscience? Comes along Darwin. Oh, that's okay. We're animals. That conscience, it's just your imagination. Of course, it can only last so long until Hitler finally came along and said, a social Darwinist, and said, conscience is, I'm here to eradicate the conscience. And where we got conscience from anyways, from Jews, and if I get rid of all the Jews, we got rid of the conscience. If I miss one Jew, even a baby Jew, from there it will start again, he said. He said that in Mein Kampf. So it is all, the whole war of the West is against the conscience. And that's why they hate us, because the Jews are the embodiment of the conscience of Western civilization. And that's their issue with us. They'll never admit that. But that is their major issue with Jews. And you don't even have to be an observant Jew. You don't have to look like me. You just have to be named Schwartz or something. And the very fact that you exist, when really you were supposed to have disappeared with the destruction of the Second Temple, when Western religion began, just your existence is a reminder that you are the conscience that they don't want to deal with. I mean, you'd want to kill me too if I followed you around all Shabbos telling you what you can't do. We represent the you can't do that. Just as far as guilt is concerned, let's say you do make a mistake and you hit that wall. You did what felt good and you hit the wall. So what happens for many people is they get stuck here. When they hit the wall, they just kind of get glued on. Can you imagine you didn't listen to the beep, 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 and you parked on someone's bumper? You pulled up in front of a cafe, you want to go get a coffee, and you pull up, you back your car up right onto someone's 2009 Mercedes, and you just land right on their bumper. You put it in park, you're like, okay, let's go. And your passenger's like, you're on his bumper. He's like, I mean, that's okay. I mean, why do they call it a bumper? We bumped and let's go get some coffee. You can't park on their bumper. So we would never park on someone's bumper. If you hit someone's bumper, you definitely pull off and hope you didn't see. But notice when you do something wrong, you do park on the bumper. You start beating yourself up. You start getting all these voices saying, you good for nothing, how could you have done that? And you can really go into a further tailspin, because think about it. Once you did that, so you know what the voice says next? That's your voice saying, you dirty, no good. You know what the voice says then? Then it says, well, since you already did that, what other behavior is available? Now that this becomes your new moral ground that you fall into, well, what other actions does that open up for you? That's what it says. You see, when you bump and you break your covenant with yourself, there's a covenant with yourself. We're not even discussing Jewish law here. Every human being has a conscience. And when we break that covenant, it creates a gap. It creates a space, an empty space in our hearts. Well, nature doesn't like vacuums. Nature doesn't like that empty space. And what we do is, instead of filling it with what normally would be tshuva, get off the wall, instead of filling it with tshuva, what we do is we fill it with all kinds of other garbage. And does it fill with the other garbage? When we start filling with other stuff, other ego stuff, or go shopping and buy stuff you don't need, or other behavior that's also of the same kind of body nature, does it fill? It doesn't fill. It widens. And what many people resort to after the pain gets enough is they resort to medication in the form of alcohol, marijuana, and all the way to prescribed medication as well. So my class on the West War against the conscience, because after Hitler's already 60 years ago, what now? And in the end, you know what it is? If it feels good, do it. That comes with billions of dollars of advertising, marketing, to get us all to do what feels good, because that runs the whole machinery with our money. If it feels good, do it. Well, what am I going to do now? Because now I don't feel good, because I blew it. Well, now it's Miller time, or it's Prozac time, or it's Glenfiddich time, or it's my medical marijuana time, or it's, you understand? It's an amazing concept. But all of this has to do with it all started with ignoring the soul, which we don't do in my community. In my community, we are proactively using the soul with Torah, mitzvahs, and prayer. For those who've ignored their soul, they're going to be relegated to conscience and guilt. And you can do well with that, and you just got to learn to listen. And when you hit, don't stay there. Get off the wall. Get off the bumper. Do the 4 steps of tshuva, the simple steps of tshuva, which are stop, say what you did to God, not to anyone else. Stop doing it. Say it to what you did. Express your regret. Had you had the clarity, you'd never have done it. That's the regret. And then commit to the future. Who knows what the future will bring, but at least now commit to the future. Do those 4 steps and get back to yourself. Don't sit on someone's bumper. Get off the bumper. Get back to the soul. To be continued tomorrow. We'll do steps 4 and 5. Shalom, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.